Hi, guys, it's Dr. Sadaf, and I just wanted to give you an update as to what is going on. So, I have opened up my practice in Chappaqua, New York, and I'm currently accepting new patients. So, I want to invite you to come and become a patient of mine. If you've been listening to this podcast, you've been listening to the episodes, you are finding so much value in all of this. I want to invite you to become a patient of mine and come see the difference with a doctor that actually has time to listen to you and support you through the transitions that you may be experiencing, whether they're perimenopause, menopause, or you're experiencing any type of sexual dysfunction. And of course, I do annual GYN exams as well. So if you're not having any problems at all and you just need a regular exam done, I am more than happy to help you out. So make sure you check out the practice. It's called FemV Health, and the website for that is www.femvhealth.com. And make sure you look that up. The phone number for the practice is 914-538-2534. And make sure that you go and check it out. Check out the website and make sure you book your appointment today. Also, I have just started a new Facebook group. It's called It Might Be Menopause Support Group by Dr. Sadaf and Holly, FemV Health. And I'd love for you to come and join that Facebook group, because in that group, we'll be talking about different ways that you can get support and education as you go through this important transition in your life. It's also about building a community that is going through the same things that you are. Oftentimes we feel that when we go through things in our life that we are the only one, but I'm here to tell you that you are not alone, and that there are so many other women going through the same symptoms that you may be going through, whether it's hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, vaginal dryness, pain with sex, brain fog, joint pain, dry eyes, any of those things, so come join us in that Facebook group. It's called It Might Be Menopause Support Group by Dr. Sadaf Lodi, and that's on Facebook. So come and join us in that community. And I definitely look forward to welcoming you there. And make sure that if you have any questions about any of the podcasts that I do, that you either DM me or email me, and I will create a podcast just for you, because you are a loyal listener and subscriber, and I would love to answer any and all of your questions. So if you have any burning questions that you are wondering about, please make sure that you email me at hello@femvhealth.com and let me know about your questions, or DM me on Instagram or TikTok, and I'll create an episode just for you. And as always, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. As you know, I am looking to get over 100,000 downloads by the end of this year, and I'd love for you to help me out in that endeavor. And so please share and like these podcasts, download them, and let all your family and friends know, because I know there is not much information out there, and some of the information out there is not actually factual. So you want to make sure that you are getting your medical information from a board certified OBGYN that knows and has studied all of this material, whether it's sexual medicine, perimenopause, or menopause. So looking forward to hearing from you. And now to the episode. I'm an American board certified OBGYN, a mom, a Muslim, and I'm talking about sex. This is the Muslim Sex Podcast. Welcome to the Muslim Sex Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sadaf Lodi, and this episode is everything you need to know about working out and really the menopause, perimenopause transition and what happens to our bodies as we get older, and how important it is to keep up with your physical fitness as we get older, and how just staying fit really improves your relationship. But before I get into it, a few things I want to make very clear. This is not meant to be any type of medical advice. So if you have any questions about working out or whether or not it's safe for you to do so, please speak with your healthcare provider. And definitely, this is no talk on religion. So if you have any questions about your religion, feel free to speak with your friendly neighborhood religious leader. This is the Muslim Sex Podcast, because I just happen to be a Muslim woman that talks about sex. So today I have on with me a very special guest, Holly Rilinger. Yes, I was going to say Rilinger, but Rilinger. Yeah. Okay, very good. And Holly is on with me today. And Holly, for all those people that may not know you, although I know over 100,000 people do know you, if you could just introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Holly Rilinger, and I'm the creator and founder of the Lifted Method. And the Lifted Method is both a virtual and in person strength training platform. And primarily, I like to educate and help women feel strong and confident. There you go,
Right, the
through strength
lifted.
training.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's excellent. So I know you do a lot of, you've been talking a lot about menopause and perimenopause. And I know you have a menopause boot camp that just started today. And so tell me a little bit about why it would be important for somebody that's going through perimenopause and menopause to really maintain their health, their workout routine, and actually kind of level it up.
Yeah. Well, every year after 40, we are going to be losing muscle mass. And as we lose estrogen, we not only lose muscle mass, it's a little bit harder for us to build muscle. And when we lose muscle mass, you want to think of muscle as really being a longevity tool. As we lose muscle, we become less capable of movement. We potentially open ourselves up to osteoporosis or osteopenia, and as we grow older, breaking a bone or falling, breaking a hip really increases our chances of dying earlier than we should. Um, so, ideally, we start lifting, and hopefully, all of this next generation of girls coming up start lifting weights in your prime bone building age, which is like before 30. But just if you're over 30, it doesn't mean you've lost your ability to do that. So I really want to encourage women who are in the middle of their life, because listen, the middle of our life used to be the end of our life. And now,
That's right.
now we're hitting 30, 40, 50, and we've got so much further to go. So we've got to be prepared. And this body of ours has to be able to weather the storms.
Absolutely, 100%. And as you know, women tend to now live a third of their lives in menopause, right? So, really, really important for us to maintain our health and maintain our strength. And I think that, like, in my mom's generation, I would definitely say that that was not something that was focused on, right? People just think that, well, I'm just getting older. So it's okay
Yeah.
if I just get weaker. It doesn't matter. That's just what's meant to be. But, now with our generation of women coming up into their midlife and, 40s, 50s, and beyond, we know that lifting weights is really, really important. And, I had the privilege of working out with you, which was, I know it was sad. You were like, "Oh my god."
It was a learning experience.
Yes,
Yeah.
but, but I really didn't challenge myself because I was so worried, and I think a lot of times people are worried about hurting themselves, right? Or if they have a previous injury to their back or whatever, they're just worried about aggravating it. So, what would you tell those women and those individuals seeking to work out, but, always kind of in the back of their head, they're like, "Oh no, am I going to get hurt again?"
Well, it's two things. Number one, if you're just worried about getting hurt in general, you've got to kind of break that mindset. Like that would be like not crossing the street because a car might hit you. Like
Right.
you've got to learn how to do something and learn from somebody who's really capable. So that's if you've never had an injury. But if you have had an injury, I get it. Like a back injury or something, it can be painful, it can be debilitating, and that can be scary. But the worst thing you can do for yourself is stop moving, and
Yeah.
then you're taking this one injury and the potential of it happening again, and you're basically throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Now you're experiencing atrophy and lack of strength in your entire body. So if you really, I like to walk down. Sometimes if my mom's scared to do something or anybody, I'm like, let's walk through the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
The worst case scenario of you re-injuring your back, you'll get better, and you'll learn from it, and hopefully you don't, and you find a professional that's going to help you not get injured again. But the worst case scenario of you not working out at all is far worse than the worst case scenario of re-injuring whatever that injury is.
I love that. I love that you do that and that you walk a person through that, right? Of the worst case scenario, because you're right. The opposite of not working out is way worse than trying to work out and, maybe being a little bit sore, or, just having to be a little bit more careful, and you slowly work up the weights, right? Because we know what can happen. We know when women are not physically active, and as they get older, by the time that they're 90, they can end up in nursing homes, right? And waiting on other people to take care of them. And then they can end up with a UTI and become septic and die because of this UTI, and because of the fact that they never took care of themselves. And
And 90 is a dream. Like if
right.
you get 90 and you do that, but there's a chance you're 75 and that's happening, or 80, or
Yes.
far, far
Yes.
earlier. I actually saw a statistic a year or so ago that blew my mind. And that was that if you're over the age of 50 and you break your hip, there's a 30% chance you'll die within the next 2 years. I'm 50.
No.
And the reason is once you break a hip and you become incapacitated, there's a whole set of things that can happen past there that are going to just,
Wow.
increase your chances of, heart failure, a variety of things. So, I mean, we can live to 90, 100 years old. So it's important that we take care of those bones, throughout our entire life.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. And that's a good point, right? Is that if I'm thinking to 90, I mean, you don't know that, you're going to be strong enough even at 90. You're hoping that, if you're lifting and if you're taking care of yourself that way, that you'll be strong enough to like play with your grandkids or whatever. But, if you're not taking care of yourself now, then there's no way that you're going to be healthy enough to even take care of yourself. And you don't know, right? We don't know how long we have. Everyone has an expiration date, so we just don't know what that is. But so important for us to take care of our bones and our health and our muscles. And, maybe you can talk a little bit just about I know I saw today actually on Instagram, you were talking a little bit about creatinine, and what can you tell us about that?
So creatine, creatine is an amino acid that's found in the body, and I've known about creatine for a long time. It's a substance that's made of three amino acids. It's found in our body. We can get them from protein-rich foods. It plays a big role with muscle health, and actually, we're now finding brain health as well. So step back a ways. We've always heard of creatine kind of in the bodybuilding world. I know when I was younger, I was like, oh, creatine, that's what the bodybuilders use. But now with more research, it's actually one of the most researched supplements that there is right now. Women, especially, we only have about 70% the capacity that men do to store this amino acid. And this amino acid gives energy to our muscles, allows our muscles to grow, allows our muscles to get stronger. It also plays a big function with heart health, gut health. So this is one of those supplements now that I consider to be a non-negotiable. And I'm 50 years old now, and I've been a trainer since I was 27. And just in the last 2, 3 years has this become something that people are really talking about. So I really think that if you're awake and you're open to learning right now, there's so many advances being made in the health field, especially for women.
Mhm.
As you know, there's not a lot of studies done with women. It's mostly with
Right.
men. So to
Yeah.
find something that we're saying like for women, creatine is really important. I'm taking something like that and I'm running with it because
Yeah.
we need all the help we can get when it comes to bone health and preventing osteoporosis and lose
Absolutely.
muscle mass.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, so what are the other supplements that you recommend women take? So you were saying creatine, and it's funny because I said creatinine, which is which is actually something we check as a function of your kidneys, actually in
Yeah,
medicine.
well, similar because it has to do with, our kidneys. Yeah.
Kidneys, yeah. So what other supplements do you recommend for somebody that's interested in maintaining muscle mass and, increasing their bone density? I know that a lot of women that may have, let's say, osteopenia, once they start lifting heavy weights and, increasing their weights that they're lifting, it really helps their bone density. So what would you recommend in terms of like other supplements to help with the
Yeah, I
muscle
mean,
mass?
not a supplement, but protein is the key building block
Yeah,
to building muscles. So, you know, let me just back up a step and say, I mean, creatine is one supplement you should definitely add, but before you even start talking supplements, we got to talk lifestyle. You got to get sleep, you got to lift weights, you got to be active, get your steps in each day. But I would say if you are somebody that's just starting to think about nutrition, which can be overwhelming, think about one thing at first, and that is how do you get 100 grams of protein in every day?
that's a lot.
And it's hard. I mean, it's a full time job if you do it, and a lot of times, unless you eat a lot of meat, you will need to supplement with a protein powder, just because I have a protein shake every single day, because on one hand I don't eat as much meat as I used to, but it's just hard to get that much protein in. But if you can get that much protein in, you're going to have a far easier time, and you'll be far more successful at building muscle.
Wow, 100 grams of protein is like a lot of protein. I
Yeah,
don't
but let's break it down for you
yeah.
too, so
Mhm.
you can actually visualize. Because I think 100 of anything's a lot, right? Like
Yeah.
automatic, you're like, whoa, 100. Like, well, okay, let's break it down.
Yeah.
Any piece of meat that's like the size of an iPhone
Yeah.
is going to be about 35 grams of protein. So when you think that, and you're thinking lunch and dinner, then
Okay.
you're already to 70.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And then you got eggs, which are 7 grams each, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. You could, like, about a cup of that would be 15 grams. So it's not impossible. When you break it down like that, it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I'm glad you bring that up because, right, in my head, I'm thinking 100 grams. What the heck? What am I? What am I going to be eating to get 100 grams in? Right, so that's kind
Yeah.
of crazy. So I'd like to focus now a little bit on, we talked a little bit about perimenopause and menopause and how important it is to lift heavy weights. I mean, I feel like everything I see on social media is about lifting heavy weights and increasing that as you get older, and how important it is for our bone density and also for our muscle mass. But I'm curious to know, in terms of like relationships, we talk about just being mentally and physically healthy for ourselves, but how does maintaining a good workout routine, working out, how does that help in like relationships and intimacy?
Well, I'm going to go two routes with that. I think that, you know, there's a lot of empowerment that comes with lifting weights. Like, I would have to say, after you trained at lifted, didn't you feel empowered by
Oh,
the
absolutely.
weights that you were able to pick up?
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
most women, unfortunately, underestimate their strength. Most men overestimate it.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I think that tells us something about societally. Like, we think we should be small and we shouldn't take up space. And like, so to come in and be like, no, you can grab those 15s, you can grab those 20s. Like, there's something that you walk out of that room with that's very empowering. And when we feel empowered, I think we feel more open to relationships. We feel more open to try something new, or maybe give someone a compliment, or, and I think that's really at the root of it. And then the other direction I'll go is, there's a lot of community in lifting
Yeah,
weights if you allow it to be, and like discussing with other women how they feel. And I think when with any sense of community comes your ability to be intimate, even on a friendship level.
yeah.
So those two directions for me personally have helped me feel good about myself and feel empowered, and build intimate relationships, maybe with relationships that I have, but also having a sense of community allows me to feel more intimate with friends.
Yeah, yeah, and I've seen that. I've seen the community, just a glimpse of it when I came by your gym, and I saw, people connecting and laughing and, working out together. And there's definitely a sense of community there that I think people long for, right? I think especially after COVID, right? There was a lot of isolation that people had. People felt really lonely and
Yeah,
doing everything online and virtually. And so to actually be together in a space, I think that offers a lot of community, it offers a lot of support. And there's just something about being able to touch somebody, right? To get away from always, texting and just seeing from behind a screen, is to actually go and just be able to give somebody a hug or tell them, how you feel or how happy you are to see them and things like that. I think there's just something to be said about that in-person community that really helps, uplift a person's mood.
for sure. I agree with you.
Yeah. So tell me about your menopause boot camp. So you have that, and how often do you run it, and what does that entail?
Yeah, so I created Menopause Boot Camp because I found that there were so many women in the middle of their life, because just like you said, our parents, our grandparents, our grandmothers and our mothers, they didn't lift weights. I certainly didn't have any role models that were women who were lifting weights. I just so happened to aspire to be a professional athlete. So I was in a gym with men, learning from men. So there's this section of women right now who are in the middle of their life. They're now taking estrogen and they're finding way, they're seeing the path laid out in front of them to live a longer life, but they're faced with osteoporosis or osteopenia, or they're just terrified. Where do I start? Where do I do this? So I started Menopause Boot Camp this past January, and it's a 2 week completely virtual course that is unintimidating and very inviting. And I'm going to teach you from the ground up how to strength train. I'm going to teach you what kind of shoes you need, what kind of minimal equipment you can use at home to get started, how to warm up, how to know what kind of weights to use for certain exercises, how to do certain exercises, just to give you a foundation of strength. What role protein plays, what role creatine plays, how do I advance myself? So this program kicks off tonight, actually. It's a live stream and we get to meet each other. I think we have about 130 women from all over the world. I think we had
Wow.
17 different countries represented in July when we did our last one.
Oh my gosh.
And we meet each other. And then every day for the week, you have a lesson that you do on your own. So you could be in any time zone and do it on your own. They're anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes. And then the following week, we come together and we do a live workout together where I can see you, correct your form. And during this whole process, people send in questions. They send videos of themselves doing an exercise. I help them with their form. So I like to think of it as a launching point for anybody who really wants to learn how to strength train and maybe doesn't have the resources or might be a little afraid to go into their gym. So to do it in a very unintimidating and welcoming environment.
That's amazing. Wow. And you said how many 17 different countries?
Yeah, we
That's
did last session. I'll have to see how many we have this month, but it's
yeah.
really spreading, and people are really enjoying it and telling their friends about it. And at the end, we have kind of a graduation ceremony, and most women are say, you know what, I feel like I have enough education now and confidence to actually take that next step.
And I think that is the most important thing, right? Is to have that confidence. And of course, you're creating a community, which of course, again, makes a big difference as opposed to people trying to learn these things on their own. They have a community, they have somebody they can talk to and ask, and then just really, I think, learning from somebody that's been doing it for so long, right? Really makes a big difference. So
Yeah.
that is fantastic. So, what got you interested in, say, like the whole perimenopause, menopause? Was it your own journey? Well, tell me a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, for the longest time, through my 30s, then hitting my 40s, just looking at the trajectory of my career, I was fearful. I was like, what's going to happen to me when I'm no longer like this young trainer, like showing my six pack and like, am I just going to become, obsolete and people are going to move on to the next trainer, or what's going to happen to my body? Like I'd been so used to hearing people talk about the change and how there's nothing you can do about it. So I really started, looking for information. This was about 5 years ago, and I started looking for information on hormone replacement therapy. And about 5 years ago, there was two options, like super medical journal heavy reading that you're just like, oh God, I don't think I can process this, or like Suzanne Summers.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing in between. And I was like, oh God, like I was looking for seminars, and a lot of the seminars you had to be a doctor to go to.
Yeah.
So I started this search a long time ago for myself, so then I could then help most of my clients who were also either my age or a little bit older than me. And God, thank you for the timing that it just so happened that right as I'm hitting perimenopause, which is right now, there's this menopause developing and all these doctors who are now talking about it. And
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that I've always been lifting heavy weights. So like I'm bringing my part to the table. Like I've been lifting weights for 30 years.
Yeah.
So now I can kind of join forces with doctors like you and Dr. Kelly Casperson and Dr. Mary Claire Haver and Dr. Corinne Men. And so, yeah, it was initially for myself and my immediate clients. And then I've realized, wow, I have a big piece that I can now contribute to this big charge, this big push for women.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. And, I think people are learning so much from the way that you teach and also, your advocacy for women in perimenopause, menopause, and really just the change that happens once you start lifting heavy weights, and seeing the changes in your own body, and how that helps not only with the insulin resistance that starts to happen in perimenopause, but also that building of muscle and that building of bone, and just changing from, being frail to being strong, I think is so, so empowering for women and really important during this time of our lives. So I'd also love to know, you have two places, right, that you're out of. You're in the Hamptons, which is a beautiful location that you have. And are you also in the city in Manhattan?
Well, not fully yet.
Right.
We operate out of a gym in Tribeca that I
Oh,
come in and I do classes here and there, and
right.
I do events out of there. That's
Yeah.
probably our next step. Like we also have a very big virtual presence, so we do a lot virtually out of the East Hampton studio where you were. But that's kind of like my personal debate right now. Do I expand into New York City too, or do I keep what I have right here and just
Right.
continue to expand virtually?
Sure, sure, sure. I'm sure that for you is like a conversation, especially because, right, that would take up a lot of your time commuting back and forth and things like that. So I'd love to know what you would say to somebody that is watching you and thinking like, wow, she is really strong. There's no way I will ever be like Holly. What would you recommend? What would you say to them?
Well, the first thing I want to tell you is I'm 5'4" and I played professional basketball. I know a thing or two about feeling like you are looking at something that feels very unattainable. Um, Anybody can be their best. You may not have my exact body, but you can have a very strong body if you just are consistent. That's all it is. And it's funny. I was going to do an Instagram post today because a lot of women right now coming into menopause boot camp, it's scary. It's overwhelming. You're taking these first steps into this whole new world that feels so big and intimidating. And if you just take one step at a time, like you just learn one thing, you just go and you get the gym membership, you just go and you buy your shoes, like if you just do one thing at a time, you're going to learn those things that are going to help get you each step of the way rather than looking at that whole staircase. But 90 days of a continuous habit, like 90 days of commitment, you would be shocked at how different your body feels and looks.
Yeah.
90 days. And if you think about 90 days, like that's just another season.
Yeah.
Like that's just, the holiday season from here. That's
Right.
just the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I think when we break things down, like it's kind of like what's the worst case scenario? If you break
Right.
it down to that and you say just 90 days, just today, and then today, and then today, I promise you it won't feel so overwhelming.
Yeah, I love that. I think that, that's, so I'm a part of this one coaching thing, and they always say that we don't do overwhelm, right? So you just look at what is the next step, and then what is the next step. And instead of looking at just like what you said, instead of looking at like this whole big picture where
Yeah.
that creates overwhelm and paralysis, right? You just look at, okay, what is the next one thing that I can do that'll get me to my goal of whatever my goal is, right? And what is one thing that I can do? And then once you accomplish that one thing, then it just builds more confidence so that you can keep going and keep going. And so you really prevent that overwhelm that way. So I like the way
Yeah,
that you
and
break it
and
down.
menopause boot camp, we really deliver it at a pace that we have gotten feedback. Like some people are like, "Oh, that's it for today." I'm like, "Yeah, that's it. No more." Like because you get excited and you're like, "Oh," and we're like, "Don't do the whole course. Do just today. It's a 15-minute, discussion about mobility." And I think when you do things that way, then you're just kind of ready for the next day. You're kind of excited to learn what's next. And that's a nice way to learn something. That's a nice way to do it where you're kind of craving what's next instead of this big, like, tidal wave of information being thrown at you where you're like, how am I going to process and remember all of this?
That's awesome. So if somebody's watching you today and they're listening to this podcast, what would you give them as one thing for them to do today?
Gosh, I mean, if you've never lifted weights before, I say sign up for my menopause boot camp. It's an excellent way to like actually get a full like education. By the way, it's $99, so we like to think it's super affordable. But if it's not that, then look around you, and maybe it's within your community. You all know something. Like I'll give you an example. I want to start a rescue ranch. I know one person that I could go talk with who's been in animal rescue before. Like, don't overthink it. Do one thing. It doesn't have to be the perfect thing. I think a lot of times when we know we need to do something, we think we have to make the perfect next step. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be action.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Just take action, right? Just do one thing. I think I'm going to sign up. You got me convinced.
Oh, great. We'd love to have you. Let's
Yeah.
do it.
I'm going to
Actually,
sign up.
you would get a lot out of it because I want to
Yeah.
see some of your weights in your hands.
Right after this. Go
Great.
sign up. So tell me if there is anything you want to leave us viewers with. Well, first, before we, end the podcast, I want everyone to know how they can get in touch with you, how they can follow you, how they can sign up with what you're offering. This is a global podcast. There's lots of people that are listening. So I know that they'd love to know how to follow you.
Yeah, well, you can. My website is theliftedmethod.com. You'll find information on my one-on-one virtual training programs there, Menopause Boot Camp. We stream a lot of our classes from our East Hampton studio. So there's a lot of ways you could join there. My Instagram handle is my name, Holly Rilinger. So that's also a great place to, if you follow me, I really try to put out a lot of content where you can learn and just kind of, I ask myself every day, what's one little thing that a beginner might find useful? So those are the two best places where you can find me.
Awesome. And so you did mention that, just start. That's one of your pros. Do you have any other pros you wanted to leave the listeners with? I love that you say to do one thing, at least just one thing every day.
Yeah, and I would say this. I think women are really hard on themselves. Like, I look at my mom, and like, I think this thought of thinking it's too late,
Yes.
happens a lot. And
Yes. I'm
it's
so
so
glad you
funny
brought that up.
because you look back and you probably said it 10 years ago, and you're like, oh
Yeah.
God, it wasn't too late. It's never too late. Like, there's
Yes.
studies showing 70-year-old women who are picking up weights and they're increasing their bone density. So get rid of the thought that it's too late and just do it.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, I was just going to ask you, and I knew there was something, must be the brain fog. But that I was going to ask you is, when is it too late? But you answered that question. It's never too late.
Yeah, it's never too late. There's always something you can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Holly, for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. I know that the people that were listening and watching got a lot of value from this episode. And, I think that one of the best takeaways that I learned, aside from, signing up for your menopause boot camp, is that, it's never too late and just do one thing every day. So I think that that's, those are really important and wise words. So thank you. Thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And hey, if you hadn't taken action and messaged me on Instagram to come take my class and then led to the podcast, it's just like, there's proof right there. Just take
Yeah,
action.
that's right. That's right. Just one thing, right?
Yeah.
So, well, we are done here and it's been real and really intimate. And remember, this is not meant to be any type of medical advice. So if you're looking to lift weights, make sure you check with your doctor and, get the clear and then start lifting heavy weights because it's only going to help you. And until next time, this is the Muslim Sex Podcast. So thank you for listening to the podcast and make sure you leave us a review, share and like the podcast. And if you leave me a review, I'd love to shout you out on social media. So be sure that you share it with all your friends. And thanks for listening.